Texas Tech's ascent this year, great thing for the Big 12. Long term, if you're talking about the health of the league, it is better for the league to have big brands, teams that consistently make the playoff, and a team or two that separates itself. And that seems to be fully in the process of happening right now with Texas Tech and BYU. BYU's won 22 games the last 2 years. Texas Tech gets a bye in the playoff this year because they got a lot of respect. They're ranked ahead of 3 one-loss SEC or Big Ten teams in the playoff rankings. That means something. It also might be the worst thing in the world for the Big 12. And Cincinnati fans are the first that appear to be finding that out, at least publicly, though. And that's something else that I want to hit on eventually here, is I feel like behind the scenes might be a little bit more here to some of this as well. But there's no doubt. There's no doubt that Texas Tech becoming a trusted brand. And I use the word trusted very carefully and intentionally there, because I think trust is a huge part of this. Texas Tech is trying to become a trusted brand that the rest of the college football world that likes to spend so much of its time pontificating about why we shouldn't include Cinderellas or G5 teams or anybody but the top 10 to 15 brands of the sport every single year. They need to be able to trust you as a bona fide playoff team and playoff caliber roster before you're going to get any amount of healthy respect. And that is where Texas Tech has done an incredible amount of groundwork in just one season this year. And Cody Campbell thinks that they're going to be even better next year. Texas Tech's billionaire mega booster. BYU, also in this same sort of category, though not all the way that Texas Tech is. We saw the result of Texas Tech and BYU playing twice, and we saw what happened with BYU and how they were treated in the playoff. But they've at least now won 11 games each of the last 2 seasons. They've been in contention for the playoff. They should have been in heavier contention each of the last 2 years, but they've at least been in contention. And so they're a name now that is becoming more and more recognized and discussed around the country, even if we around here don't always agree with the assertions of everybody and the conclusions that everybody makes about Texas Tech's playoff ability. Okay. However, having said all of that, well, that development is good. And I think like Brett Yormark has even spoken to this, if I'm not mistaken, before, like, hey, it's all great that we're the league of parity and lots of teams that are equally resourced and have similar amounts of history and all that, yada, yada, yada. But what we need is a couple of big brands to develop. Like, look at the Big Ten, how much respect they get when you have big brands that can win a national championship. It doesn't matter that 3/4 of your league is below average or bad. But you've still got a lot of schools in this league, while Texas Tech and BYU outrace everybody financially, which is why the Texas Tech roster in particular looks so much different than everybody else in the Big 12 this year. As they continue to outrace everybody on that front financially, you have a lot of Big 12 schools that are still struggling just to hit the rev share number. And Texas Tech is freaking ruthless while that's happening. So I don't know specifics about Cincinnati's financial situation as it relates to revenue sharing, but I do know that Iowa State, for instance, has Jamie Pollard, the AD at Iowa State, has spoken publicly about some of the struggles that Iowa State has had there. Remember his comment of like, hey, do we want to just be Northern Iowa? Because if that's what we're going to be, then we've got to make that decision, or we're going to have to get subsidies from the university or increase student fees or something like that. Iowa State just lost its head coach to Penn State, who then immediately turned around at the press conference there and started talking about, yeah, we had to do all the NIL contracts ourselves, like basically made it seem like I didn't have a lot of resources and or help. Those are the situations that a lot of schools across the league are in, and it's going to be hard to hold on to your star players if that's the case. Enter here Cincinnati. Okay? Brendan Sorsby decides to enter the transfer portal / perhaps go pro. And I think if you're a Cincy fan, that's the way that you would want to see this go. You would want to see Brendan Sorsby just go to the NFL, not have to worry about him transferring somewhere, especially somewhere within the conference. Sorsby was as recently as this week, I think it was this week, very recently, CBS Sports put out a mock draft where Brendan Sorsby was a first-round pick. So, I mean, there is a definite chance that this guy just winds up going pro. But if he doesn't, It sure seems like he's going to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is not even being subtle about hiding this. You know, I mean, that's the other thing. Texas Tech they know how to flaunt the money and flaunt the resource advantage that they have. They are not shy about it at all. Excuse me, because one of the things that we've seen this week is James Blanchard retweet Brendan Sorsby's announcement to go into the transfer portal. Again, James Blanchard, the GM at Texas Tech. So here's a quick little screenshot of that. Brendan Sorsby tweeting out his thank you and the note, and you can see James Blanchard reposted. So, you know, no shame in the game of James Blanchard, who, by the way, speaking of Texas Tech being ruthless and all in and having the financial edge, got extended this week. So did Sheil Wood, who's a defensive coordinator at Texas Tech. Where did he come from? He came from Houston. He came within the conference. Texas Tech is not shy about raiding the league and throwing its resources around. We know it was about money with Sheil Wood. We heard Willie Fritz come out and say that at a press conference. He was not about to shy away from that, right? So we kind of know what the deal is with the Red Raiders right now. And I'm not, I'll get to more on this in a moment. This is not me like shaming them by any stretch of the imagination at all, but it's pointing out some realities here. So why Texas Tech for Brendan Sorsby? Well, he is familiar with Lubbock, being a kid from Dallas that I know this resurfaced on Twitter this week. Back in the day, at least I found this. I was searching for something on Brendan Sorsby, but you can very easily find here from Brendan Sorsby back in 2021 at a Texas Tech football camp. It had tagged like Matt Wells, among many others. Good memories, right? Red Raiders. He's from the state of Texas. He obviously has been in the conference with Texas Tech. He can see up close and personal what's going on there. And he had camped there before. He's got a bit of familiarity. But that's not the biggest story this week. All the internet's loose. They've been all over that. James Blanchard's not even trying to hide it. I mean, Tech making it pretty obvious there. But people have been following Gretchen Sigman, who is Brendan Sorsby's girlfriend, who just transferred from Cincinnati playing volleyball to, where do you think she transferred to this week to play volleyball? Any guesses out there? Anybody in the audience? Yeah, Texas Tech. She is transferring to Texas Tech to play volleyball there. So, yeah. It seems like everything is telling us on the internet this week that Brendan Sorsby will be a Texas Tech Red Raider if he's not going to the NFL. I feel for Cincy fans on this. I feel for a lot of Big 12 fans out there. If you're a Houston fan, you know, and you lost Sheil Wood, we could be heading for a situation where this happens quite a bit. I would not blame Texas Tech one bit for this, and that is not what the purpose of this topic or this video is. I am not trying to blame Texas Tech. If I were a Tech fan, this is exactly how I would want my school to act. If I've got the money advantage and I can go pick the best players in the conference who ostensibly you've had a better chance to scout or get to know up close and personal, maybe in the region you've recruited them before, and or you're just around them more, you can see them actually play you. If you're out on the field against them, you get a better vibe for what they are as a player, as a competitor, all these different things. You can get a much better scout than you can on film. You know, otherwise, why would guys go show up to camps to scout players as opposed to just watching a bunch of film of everybody, right? So if you have the opportunity to do that, don't hate the player, don't hate the game. I can't hate Texas Tech for taking advantage of doing that. Tech in the old system was a 500 program, basically, in the last 15 years. Nobody was like feeling sorry, spending a lot of time feeling sorry for Texas Tech at that point. I mean, that's what's got to be maddening to Red Raider fans about the way their finances are treated these days, where it's like, oh, Texas Tech is only here because they spend money, as opposed to everybody else who spends on an equal level to them in the Big Ten and SEC. It's like nobody was shedding tears for us or feeling bad for us or paying attention to us when under the old system, we were just a 500 program. And now you have all this interest suddenly because we can pay more guys. No, we're going to take advantage of this for as long as we possibly can. Maybe some guardrails come in at a certain point. Maybe there are more limits on what we can spend. Right now, there's not. And we're going to go take what we can. That's what so many in the sport are doing. So you can't single out Texas Tech for that. But it shows up more. It's a little more stark when it happens in the Big 12 right now, because you have a wider gap between the top and the bottom in terms of resource wise, what they're able to spend right now between Texas Tech and everybody else, sans maybe BYU and probably Utah now moving forward needs to enter this discussion because of their private equity money. Whole different conversation is the risks associated with that long term, but short term, it sure appears like Utah is going to have the money. So at least this year, we're looking at this gap. It is wide. And in the SEC, it's like, yeah, you have some teams that spend really big, and this is probably another reason that Tech gets singled out for it. But you have a lot of teams that spend really big, but there are multiple of them. So you don't have this big gap where it's just one team that looks so much different than everybody else because of it. And even then, you still have situations like this popping up. I mean, we all just watched Lane Kiffin, right? And everything that happened with the Lane Kiffin situation, that was an intra-conference deal, much like this is. But I think you're going to start seeing this more and more. I mean, every time a Big 12 player is hitting the portal now, the internet immediately starts speculating about Texas Tech, and with good reason. Like, I understand why. Sam Leavitt, it was originally like LSU, Texas Tech. Now it seems like, by the way, anybody who's interested, it seems like Oregon, LSU, and Indiana are the programs of interest there for Sam Leavitt, but not Texas Tech. However, that's where everybody's mind immediately goes. I will just tell you that from behind the scenes, I was going to say early on in the offseason. First of all, we're very early in the offseason. Second of all, this was during the season. Like in the early to mid-November, I was hearing about Texas Tech at least floating an offer to a Big 12 quarterback that I'm pretty familiar with. That was a gaudy offer, a big offer. And I think the idea behind it is, hey, maybe it's, if you want to say committable, quote unquote, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But at least it's going to force the rest of our competitors to have to step up their game, perhaps pay their guy a little bit more, spend more of their cap or the money available to them on said quarterback and not have as much left for everybody else. If you're Tech, you can be aggressive like that because you've got it like that. The money threat is much more real coming from you than it would be many other programs. Tech's flaunting it right now. Full on, full stop. That's what they're doing. You better watch out if you're somebody else in the Big 12. I'm just here to point out the reality. Again, don't hate the player, hate the game. They are playing by the rules. They are playing by what the rules are. You can say, hey, there aren't really many rules, and that is fair. There are not many rules right now, and Texas Tech is doing absolutely everything it can to take advantage, put its program in the best position to last long-term, whether that's going to be long-term in the Big 12, whether that winds up in a Super League, getting an invite to one of the other two leagues, and we can all sit here and grumble about it, whine about it, complain about it if you're not a Texas Tech fan, but the reality is you would want your school to be acting like this too. It's just going to suck, I think, for a lot of Big 12 schools over the next few years to see this happen with other guys. So Cincy may be the first. Brendan Sorsby at Texas Tech could very well be a reality.